As the panelist is already here, I think we could start with our session today. Good morning, ma'am, and everybody. Good morning for being here with us. This is an extremely special day because it's the second day of ShaktiCon, and greetings from everybody in our team. For those who do not know, ShaktiCon is an international conference organized by Team Shakti with a focus on bringing more women into the field of cybersecurity. And we are doing that by engaging people in beginner level conferences as well as giving them CTFs so that they get a taste of what exactly they are going into. The top performers as CTF will get a prize worth of almost $4,000. Now, again, as madam is already here, let's get into a session. And it's a great pleasure of mine to invite our first speaker of the day, Ms. Priti Shrivastava. She is a former general manager, software security at Intel Corporation. She has managed security of all softwares in the area of operating services, cloud services, security solutions, performance libraries, graphic softwares, compilers, and many more at Intel for almost 9 years. Prior to working on security, she has managed various products like compilers, binary translation software, Parallel Advisor, and other important products. She has done an MS in computer science at Ohio University, US, and MS in mathematics and computer science at IIT Delhi, India. She's also passionate about promoting women in security, and one of the major reasons we look forward to hearing your session. I welcome you, ma'am, into our session to give us an insight on the pragmatic approach on software security and to kickstart day 2 of ShaktiCon. I welcome you to take over, ma'am.
All right. So let me just share where's the sharing right now? Okay, it's still disabled. Would you allow me to share?
Just a minute, ma'am. We're trying to fix that.
Yeah, I'm trying to see whatever happened here. Oh, it worked. I think. Are we on the roll?
Yes, seems
Okay,
like
Yeah, we are able to see.
Great. All right.
Thank you.
I should have thought of that before. All right, so a few minutes lost here, I guess 10 minutes lost almost here. So we'll speed it up. So let's just start, like the introductions already has been there. So this is I'm just going to talk about, a pragmatic approach to software security. When I started working in Intel, how, I sort of brought it up from scratch. There was no program on security. There was no security being built into our systems, in our software or hardware for that matter. I started this from scratch. And so I just wanted to share that first before I would talk about, just promoting women here, of course. Why security matters. I think most of you already know from yesterday that you've been to the conference, have been attending, and some of you are already in this field. So we'll talk a little bit about that, not a whole lot. What's the approach? Then I will dig into a little bit about the security development lifecycle, which most of you are familiar with, SDL. And then many tools that you can use. I'll talk a little bit about them, and you can obviously find them otherwise. Indicators, what one should track in order to be successful in making sure that the security is really built into your software. And then some key takeaways, and hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A, given that we had some hiccups here. So security really matters, and nowadays it's even more. Every day you hear about breaches, right? Just yesterday, actually, I read in the news, Google had a whole bunch of issues with their privacy of their photos, and that many programs, many accounts were hacked about 2 years ago, and they did not even tell the users. And yesterday they said they have legally said that they are not going to let the users know about this. because none of their important sort of PII wasn't impacted. PII is your personally identifiable information. So, every day we hear about this. In 2020, I have some data here to say, how many data breaches were there? There were over 155 million breaches, and the records which were exposed were even larger, over 1 billion. So you can imagine, how this is really impacting our lives, not only personal lives, business, finances, everything. And a couple of these major security incidents that we had just this year, it hasn't been that long, right? We are in April. So Parallel is one of the, social media app. It's kind of a conservative app. I don't know if you know much about it. So the data that they had was hacked. All of the data was gone. And they didn't even know until the Amazon Web Services, which is also known as AWS, they removed their platform from the servers. That's when they came to know. And it was essentially 70 terabyte of leaked information that had pretty much 100%, 99.9% of their post messages, video data, time, location. There were people who verified their identity at Parallel with the driver license, photo ID, everything got exposed. So, these are like huge issues. This is like the top hacked issue this year, and just in 3 months. Then Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, these three companies were impacted by a Chinese social media company, which is called Social Arcs, that suffered a data leak through an unsecured database. And that exposed account details and PII of at least 214 million social media users. From where? Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And so these are the kind of things, and once you get exposed like that, your email addresses, phone numbers, profile pictures, your account login names, password, your company name, whereabouts, location, everything gets exposed. So this is why security is important, because we had these hackers who are out there not doing anything else, but just hacking our systems. Cloud, your platforms, your hardware, your devices, your financial systems, everything. So security really does matter. I just wanted to sort of start with that because I know many of you are already aware of many things, but just to highlight a little bit. So what's the approach we can take, you can see the whole screen, can you?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So the organic growth of security workforce was one of my theme of building security from scratch. I said, hey, you know what? We already have engineers, smart people. Let's make sure either they understand the security already or we teach them. And then we also understand what are the risks of our products, because not everything is same in the software or hardware on devices, right? Some are more high risk security profile things, others are lower risk. So let's understand what kind of products we're building in Intel, for example. And, so that's risk assessment is sort of the first thing you do. Then you want to assess the security capability of your organization or your company. And then make sure that you have the right set of training to make them good security engineers, and these security engineers are people who are implementing security features, who are testing, who are architecting, all of those. And in general, you can make people a security architect or expert off the bat, but just by training. You need to hire some of them, right? There are out there in public. So that's what I actually put together. That we hire security architects and security experts. And then we need to make sure that we have a good secure development lifecycle. That's essential to this whole thing, right? If you don't have a good security development process, you're not going to get there. So you need that. And then the security program you need to have in place with the right set of people in order to govern the process, govern the security development lifecycle, how it's embedded in your development cycle, with Jira and other things. So managing the SDL process, risk assessments, training, and something we called final security sign-off to make sure that the product you're shipping is really good. And then you want to manage through your security experts and security architects so that they are embedded in different teams, different product teams, in making sure that they are lifting them up on a security retro scale, So that's important. So that's sort of the higher level approach on this and sort of the crack of the meat. But if we go into the security development lifecycle, which is the next slide here, this picture right on the right side is really talks about secure development lifecycle, that what kind of things it comprises. So I'm not sure if you can see the whole picture. Maybe I can do this. Is this better? All right, so it starts with, you need to understand what are the requirements for your products, for your software, hardware, devices, whatever you're building. What's the design like? Are you making sure the design has the right set of implementation that is going to have eventually based on the architecture? So you need to do threat modeling. You need to understand what is the threat landscape for your particular product. And so along with the threat landscape and the requirements that you have, you can have a good threat model. I think you had a class yesterday from Sung Lee on threat modeling. By the way, she used to be in my team at Intel. I had hired her. Anyway, so threat modeling is important. And then the design review that comes after that on the architecture side, using the threat model and the architecture diagrams that the product teams provide, you actually do a security design review. You make sure they had the right set of controls in place, sort of right design in place so that the implementation can begin. So this is sort of a very important point here in the SDL. And this takes a lot of time in general to get through. Then the next thing is you start developing based on your design and architecture. Once the development is done, you do need to put some control to make sure everything is being done the way it was designed, right? Either your architects or your experts sort of cross-check these things. Then you get into the security testing and code reviews. So the code review is done to make sure it's a security code review, to make sure that all the security errors are taken out of the code, right? So it's actual manual code review the security experts do. And then the security testing, we'll talk a little bit more about the tools, but one of the things I really emphasize is important to do is fuzzing and penetration testing. I know everybody out there does static code analysis and all of that, right? Clockwork or Coverity, you're running those every night, and that's important. But on top of that, you got to fuzz your software and do the penetration testing based on the threat model, based on your threat landscape. You got to do penetration testing. It's very important. And then the final security review, which is going to basically ensure that all the security bugs are fixed, right? Architecture got defined appropriately, implementation got done appropriately, and based on your security risk, you have done everything that ought to be done in security testing, and make sure that there are no escapes, right? And then you release. Now, of course, at the release time, you also need to make sure the infrastructure that you're releasing it is. So for example, it's a cloud app, you need to make sure that cloud security is built into that as well. So, you need to sort of make sure all the issues around security are resolved before you release. And then let's talk about, from here, then let's talk about tools. So vulnerability detection tools and secure development process tracking tools, these two are key to making a program of security successful. So vulnerability detection, where you have to do during development and during the release cycle. Some of the important things you can do is compiler flags, for example. You make sure you're using the right compiler flags. For example, runtime buffer overflow detection, runtime bound checking, C++ string in containers. Do you have the right set of security flags that you're using there? Increased reliability of backtraces, full ASR for executable. These are compiler flags that you can use to make sure that you have compiled and built your program with without any bugs. Now, static and dynamic analysis, I'm sure you may have some other sessions to talk about But like I mentioned earlier, Clockwork, Coverity are the static analysis tools. Dynamic analysis are like AppScan, Fortify, Checkmarks, many others. Then for binary analysis for third-party code, now this is a very important item in a security program. The binary analysis for third-party code means the third-party libraries, for example, OpenSSL is an open source library. You need to make sure you're using the right version of OpenSSL or you're going to have security vulnerabilities. So you got to do the binary analysis for third-party code. One of the tools that we were using was BDBA. It's called Black Duck Binary Analysis Tool by Synopsys, and it's very powerful. So that must be done during the release cycle. You know, once you finish the development, when you've done SAST and that stuff, you got to be making sure, and in fact, keep doing it during your development as well as release to make sure you don't have any old libraries that you're using from third party. You can either, it could be Microsoft or them. Fuzzing. Now in the fuzzing area, there are lots of different tools out there. They're open source like AFL. There are Defensix, you know, there's Defensix from Codenomicon. That's one of very, very good fuzzing tool. FuzzyLop, Spike, you know, quite a few. Then get into penetration testing. Now, penetration testing tools, obviously huge lists out there, right? But you got to see what kind of threats are important for you to detect based on your posture, your product. So Burp Suite, for example, for web, right? In order to exploit a vulnerability that you may already kind of have a sense about, you can use Metasploit. Qualys for network and Wi-Fi, you know, issues that you want to detect. Wireshark is another one. So it's like many of them out there, but some of these are really important that we were using at Intel, and that's something you can also explore. Now, in terms of secure development process tracking tool, a latest one, which is getting really a lot of good reviews, is Secure Development Elements. It's also known as SD Elements. It's one of the tools that Security Compass, for example, actually has. It's very good in the sense it's actually going to track the picture I showed you, pretty much requirement, design, development, testing, and final security sign-off, the risk assessments, all of those things it tracks, and also has capabilities to provide SDL for Agile, which is another topic which of its own to talk about. So going into now the next slide, which talks about the indicators. The indicators are really to make sure that you're doing the right things and you know, you're tracking them well. So internal vulnerability tracking, you know, in terms of bugs, right? Vulnerabilities are security bugs, essentially, which could possibly be a bug. That's why we call them vulnerability. So during development and pre and post releases, you need to keep making sure that you are tracking the number of bugs that are being found, fixed, what is the lifetime, you know, all of that. External incidents that are reported by your customers, you need to track, right? Because you need to understand whether you're improving your product on a continuous basis. So life of an incident, how long does it take to fix an incident? Incident is essentially a security vulnerability, right? How long it takes to fix those? What are the severity levels? Are they the 24-hour fix needed type of, you know, 0-day bugs? Or are they something that are low risk and we can take, you know, next release to fix it? So severity levels are important. And then time to fix and release. Now, how long it takes to fix and how long it takes to get it to the customer's hand, which is a totally different thing, right? And you may have to go through channels to release a product and whatnot. So you need to track all of these things and organization's progress. Now, because we have built this on an approach on where there is organization have the right set of maturity levels and resources, we need to make sure that we demonstrate the progress on that, as well as training, what kind of usage of the tool we have, are they consistently using it, the level, you know, what, you know, different variety of tools, different variety of testing they're doing, are they benefiting from the tools? And then security development process compliance. Of course, you need to make sure SDL compliance is in place. So these are the things that you need to measure and make sure that your management understands from time to time, like a quarterly review or such, and track these metrics to make sure that you're making good progress and making an impact in the security of your product. And then the key takeaway is really that in order to have a successful security program, you need to acquire adequate budget. You need to talk to your management and make sure you have proper funding to be able to hire new resources or train current resources or buy tools or training or buy training. In fact, there are many, vendors which provide training, right? And so that's another, like SANS, for example, is really expensive. And by the way, security training is very, very expensive in general. So you need to have budget to do that. You need to make sure that you have your resources are skilled and have the appropriate training. For example, if you're doing any cloud app, you want to make sure you do have a cloud security expert, if not a cloud security architect in place. Similarly, other areas, right? And then you want to make sure that you have deployed all of those required tools. If you buy the tools and you don't deploy them in a consistent manner, they're just sitting on the shelf, it isn't going to help you. So you got to make sure that they're deployed and you have this as part of your SDL process, monitoring them on a continuous basis using metrics. Then the required training for all employees, not just the people who are working on security. You need to have training for all of the software development or hardware development people, all engineers, because you want to make sure they understand why security is important. And then robust security architecture, I cannot say less things about that. This is so important. You have to emphasize on that. In any company, any design you do, you got to make sure it's a secure design, because that's where it starts. If you don't have a secure architecture design, then you're not going to get there. You're going to find issues where you have to go and redesign. So you want to avoid that. And then adequate security testing. It can never be enough. Keep doing as much as you can. Static, dynamic, fuzzing, code reviews, penetration testing. At the end, after the release testing, running apps, whatever you can do. And then adherence to security development process is really the key. The companies fail where they implement everything and then nobody follows. So you got to make sure that it's being followed, you're tracking it using SD elements or some other tools like that, and have a program which is constantly monitoring it. So that's all I have today. And I think we are right in time. I don't know if you have time for Q&A at this point. You guys tell me.
So, Priti, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
You have been leading security for decades, and at Intel. So tell me from your experience, what are like the top 3 things that you feel are the most important things that any you can say medium or small scale enterprise should watch out for, that do not have large budgets to really secure their systems, but the key critical things that they should have.
Yeah, so I think first of all, a training just for all of the, there are a lot of open source trainings as well. So for the small companies, even for startups, in fact, my son has a startup, so I advise him quite a bit. So what you do is you want to get free software, free training as much as possible, definitely, because you don't have budget. You don't have enough budget to buy, and they're very expensive, I agree. But there's enough information out there that you can get. And you can, the top 10-ish, ways of managing your security through your open source, sites, websites that you can do. OWASP is one of them, right? I'm a member of OWASP. And OWASP top 10 is something pretty much everybody does. Like all the people who, develop apps for Apple, for example, they go through that list. So that's one. This is something minimum you got to do. is check out our website, get those bugs out. And they are very good in describing what exactly you're looking for, actually. It's like doing a code review and then implementing it. So do that. Then in terms of training, there are some trainings available online that you can take, like, basic training, for your emails, for example, right? How do you tackle those? What kind of things, spoofing, things like that you have to look for. So I think some of those basic trainings are available that you should deploy, and cheaper is fine, as long as at least something is happening. And then the third thing is, try to make sure that your infrastructure is secure. When you develop, you won't think about the software product that you're releasing, but what about the infrastructure you are using? The IT part of the company, so to speak, what networks you're using, what clouds you're using, and your desktops, all of those need to be secure. At least spend a little bit of money on firewall. I think that's kind of the basic thing I would say somebody should think about. Securing infrastructure, securing your software, and getting people to have security mindset by training. Any more questions?
Thank you.
Other Q&A sections here. Can I ask those questions?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So one of the questions are there any specific audit agencies like ISO for security?
Oh, there are many in US, at least, there are many. PwC is one of the biggest one, Pricewaterhouse. We have used them. So there are many out there. I'm not sure, in India, I'm sure they are doing similar things in India as well. Intel India, for example, I know was using PwC. So that's the first one that comes to my mind.
Another question there. What are the recently used security tools that a professional should be familiar with?
Should you be familiar with, okay, so we talked about tools, right? Different categories of tools. So if you're asking about the testing tools, I think, one of the first thing everybody should know about Clockwork or Coverity or check marks. One of these static analysis and dynamic analysis tools are very important. And if you are into fuzzing, because your software requires fuzzing. Fuzzing is essentially random input testing. So fuzzing, you can use like AFL, open source, is pretty good. I would say 90% of your issues would be found by that. So I think those are the ones. And then if you're doing web applications, maybe Burp Suite for penetration testing would be good. So apps are generally on the web, on the internet. So I think that's a good one to do. But if you're getting into network, then Wireshark and others come in, Qualys and etc.
There's one more question. Which are the critical components in a software which must have security audits?
Which must, I think
what are the critical components
for a must
security
audit? What are the critical components?
What are the critical components in a software which must have security audits?
Oh, I see. I think in general, security audits go after whether you have SDL defined, secure development lifecycle. Are you using SDL? That's where they start with. Then they look into what tools you're using and what kind of testing you're doing. And are you consistently doing it? For example, if you're running Clockwork or Coverity, are you running it every night? Regression testing. So they look at that, and then they look at your results. It's not like they look at the progression in it. So it's not just like, okay, we're using and you're done, check, It's going to be that you're going to have to show them the outputs of everything. If you did a security architecture review, what's the proof? So audit's always looking for proof for everything. So that's, these are some minimum things that they're going to look at. If you have done testing, they're looking at the testing results. They randomly might look at some of them. And they don't look at in your code to see if you fixed it. That's one thing which is always missing in audits, I would say. But they're looking at the reports. So just by reports, they, okay, well, you had, 20 issues and now, 2 weeks later, okay, they're all fixed. You don't have any more issues because your regression testing shows you're clean, right? So things like that, they're going to look at. They also look at if their compliance with, ISO standards and HIPAA, depending on which area you're in. So they will make sure that you're following those standards and you're meeting those standards.
One more last question. You said that when you started, you had to build security from scratch. So getting people to take security as a major, seriously is a constant challenge. So what motivated Intel to take it seriously?
I think, I had to do a little bit of selling, quite a bit of selling to the management. Actually, it's less engineers than the management, but the managers don't want to put their people on security. They have development to do and they have release to do and all that stuff. So you struggle constantly with the development managers. That's where it starts. And that's why I emphasize security training as one of the things when Krishna asked that question, right? What are the 3 things that you would tell any company? So training, even though it sounds kind of boring thing, and it's not like it's such a big taboo. Oh, I got to do training. I got to spend time. But, we go to college, don't we? We take our degrees, don't we? So how did you get there? You obviously did get trained. That's how you are here. So it's important to train people, and people need to understand this, and that they have to have some security understanding in order to even find a buffer overflow in the code, right? So since I come from the compiler background, it was a little bit easier for me to understand the importance of security because I implemented these things, where Stack overflows were like big issues, or heap overflows were the big problems for me. So I could talk to people in that sense, at that level, and say, hey, you don't really want these bugs in your code, because first of all, you'll have functional issues as well as security issues. When they can relate it to a functional issue, they get it very quickly. So that's how I sort of started talking to people and getting them to understand. It's a lot of evangelizing, the importance of security to people in all levels. Is engineers, managers, executives, we got to do all of that. Marketing doesn't get it. They want to ship the product. Who cares about the security? I got to get this thing out there for some conference or for some launch. You got to teach them too. So that's, the training is important, and getting people to understand the importance of security. I think it starts at the, the root level. And then getting people interested in work on it, it's not that hard. What you do is you demo a couple of hacks, and then everybody wants to find, oh, somebody hacked my code, So that's the most easy way to convince somebody. And then they're, oh, yeah, I want to do this. I want to figure out how this happened. Like, one of the conferences here is Black Hat, which also has DEF CON. I don't know if you heard of it. But DEF CON is basically that. A lot of hacking, seminars and booths, and people just go and learn there. That's how those conferences got popular, and so many people work on this kind of stuff now. But my message to women, we need more women working on security. It's really important. And I have sent, some outlines and some statements to, I think it was one of you. But I think the important thing is that women can do anything. And they have a really good focus, good eyes to find things. I think it's really important that they become good hackers, not the sort of the black hackers or black hat hackers, but good hackers, who can find white hat hackers is what we call them here. So that's important. And I encourage, women out there who are watching, please, if you already are in security, great, improve your knowledge. If you don't have security background, you're an engineer or IT person, get into it, get some training, just go Google some or go to OWASP. I told you that already. OWASP website really has a lot of information. You can start poking at it. GitHub has so many things on security, so many little things, people have released. All these open source tools, they're released on GitHub, right? AFL and I don't know, what's that, the fuzzing lop, and then a whole bunch of things. I mean, I don't go and code anymore, but it fascinates me. If I go to GitHub and I see all this kind of stuff out there, I'm like, wow. So there's a lot of things, you guys can find, and you just need motivation, So self-motivate and get into it.
Thank you, honestly. Honestly, it's been a pleasure hearing you pour in your knowledge about software security, including the different tools and indicators, and also giving us a thorough framework on constructing a successful security program. Seriously, thank you so much for such an insightful session. ShaktiCon is grateful to have you as a speaker, and we hope that you join us for further events also. Thank you so much.
Yes, I will. Thank you. Have a great day, and thumbs up for the ShaktiCon.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye-bye.